The Great Hall on Nexus Prime buzzed with activity. 847 different alien species filled the massive chamber. Their voices created a strange mix of sounds: clicking, chirping, electronic beeps, and growls. This was the monthly meeting of the Galactic Council. Ambassador Zektar stood at the center podium. His blue skin gleamed under the bright lights. As the current council leader, he called for order. The noise slowly died down. "We begin today's session," Zektar announced. His voice echoed through the chamber. First item: the resource dispute between the Crystalline Collective and the Void Swimmers. In the middle section of the hall, 3 humans sat quietly. They wore simple gray uniforms with no decorations. Dr. Sarah Chen sat in the center, flanked by her 2 assistants. They looked ordinary compared to the other delegates around them. The crystalline beings sparkled like living diamonds. Their representatives stood up, light dancing across their faceted surface. "The Void Swimmers have taken mining rights in Sector 7 without permission," they said. Their voice sounded like wind chimes. The Void Swimmers lived in space itself. Their delegate floated in a special container filled with dark energy. "The crystals claim ownership of empty space. This is wrong," the Void Swimmer replied. Their words came through a translator device. For the past 10 years, this was when the humans would speak up. Dr. Chen always had something to say. She would suggest compromise solutions. She would talk about win-win situations. She would offer detailed plans that somehow made both sides happy. The other delegates had gotten used to it. Some found it annoying. The humans always wanted to help, even when nobody asked them to. They talked too much. They had opinions about everything. Today felt different. Zektar turned to the human section. "Dr. Chen, does humanity have any input on this matter?" Dr. Sarah Chen stood up slowly. She looked around the chamber. Her eyes met Zektar's, then moved across the other delegates. Everyone waited for her usual long speech about fairness and cooperation. Instead, she said 7 simple words. "Humanity declines to speak on this matter." Then she sat back down. The chamber fell completely silent. This had never happened before. Even the automatic translation system seemed confused, running the same 7 words through their processors multiple times. Zektar stared at the human delegation. Dr. Chen sat calmly, her hands folded in her lap. Her 2 assistants showed no expression at all. "I'm sorry, Dr. Chen," Zektar said carefully. "Could you repeat that?" Dr. Chen stood up again. She spoke in the same calm voice. "Humanity declines to speak on this matter." She sat down again. The Crystalline Collective's representative flickered with confused colors. The Void Swimmer's container pulsed with dark energy. Whispers started spreading through the chamber. Zektar decided to move on. Maybe the humans were having some kind of technical problem with their translation devices. The next item was a territorial dispute. The hegemony wanted to expand their borders into neutral space. 3 smaller species objected. This was exactly the kind of issue that Dr. Gi Chen usually spoke about for 20 minutes. "Dr. Chen," Zektar called. The humans stood up once more. "Humanity declines to speak on this matter." Now the whispers became louder. Something was definitely wrong. The humans never stayed quiet about territorial disputes. They had strong feelings about smaller species being bullied by larger ones. The meeting continued. Trade regulations came up for discussion. The humans said nothing. New membership applications were presented. The humans said nothing. A proposal for hyperspace taxation was debated. The humans said nothing. Every time they were asked for their opinion, Dr. Chen gave the same response. 7 words. No explanation, no additional comments. By the time the session ended 4 hours later, the entire chamber was on edge. Delegates clustered in small groups, talking in hushed voices. Everyone was asking the same question. What was wrong with the humans? The Crystalline Collective's representative approached the human delegation as they prepared to leave. "Dr. Chen," the crystal being said, their voice tinkling with concern. "Are your people well? Is there some crisis on Earth?" Dr. Chen looked at them with the same calm expression she had worn all day. "We are quite well. Thank you for asking." "Then why won't you participate in discussions?" "We have nothing useful to contribute at this time," Dr. Chen replied. "Good day." The humans left the chamber without another word. As their ship departed from Nexus Prime, emergency meetings began across the galaxy. The Crystalline Collective called their allies together. The Void Swimmers sent urgent messages to their trading partners. The Hegemony activated their intelligence networks. Everyone remembered what had happened the last time humans went quiet. On their ship heading back to Earth, Dr. Chen's assistant asked her a question. "How long do we maintain the silence protocol?" Dr. Chen looked out at the stars. "Until the job is finished," she said. "They had their chance to listen when we were talking." Back on Nexus Prime, Ambassador Zektar sat alone in his office. He pulled up old records from the Council database. He searched for the last time humans had refused to participate in discussions. What he found made his blood run cold. 50 years ago, humans had spoken passionately about a threat called the Drakmari Empire. They had begged for action. They had presented evidence. They had warned everyone about the danger. The Council had ignored them. The humans had kept talking for months, trying to convince everyone to act. Then one day, they had stopped talking about the Drakmari entirely. 6 months later, the Drakmari Empire had disappeared. 12 billion beings, gone without a trace, no explanation ever given. When asked about it, humans claimed they had no idea what happened. Zektar's hands shook as he closed the files. He reached for his communication device and began sending urgent messages to every major power in the galaxy. The humans had stopped talking again. And that meant they were planning something that would make talking pointless. 3 weeks had passed since the first silent council meeting. The pattern continued. Humans showed up to every scheduled meeting, every diplomatic gathering, every trade negotiation. They arrived on time, took their seats, and listened carefully to everything that was said. But they only spoke 7 words. Humanity declines to speak on this matter. Captain Vexhai of the Merchant Guild noticed the change first in the trading posts. His cargo ship arrived at New Terra Colony expecting the usual friendly chatter from human dock workers. For years, they had always talked while loading cargo. They shared jokes, asked about his family, offered suggestions for better shipping routes. This time was different. The human workers arrived exactly on schedule. They loaded the cargo perfectly. They processed all the payments correctly, but they only spoke when absolutely necessary for the job. "Docking Bay 7 is ready," one worker said. "Cargo manifest approved," said another. "Payment confirmed, safe travels," said the dock supervisor. That was it. No friendly conversation, no questions about his journey, no suggestions for improvement, just professional silence. Captain Vexhai tried to start a conversation. "How's the weather been here?" The human worker looked at him politely. "The weather information is available on your ship's computer. Is there anything else you need for the cargo transfer?" The captain left New Terra Colony feeling deeply unsettled. He had visited human worlds for 15 years. He had never seen them act this way. Similar reports came in from across the galaxy. Human trading ships continued their routes on schedule. They delivered goods, collected payments, and maintained their contracts perfectly. But the crews stopped talking beyond basic business needs. The change wasn't limited to trade. Human research teams working with alien scientists became professionally distant. They shared data as required but stopped offering insights or suggestions. Human engineers helping with construction projects worked efficiently but no longer proposed improvements or alternatives. Ambassador Zektar received reports from his intelligence network. Human colonies appeared normal from the outside. Cities functioned properly. Farms produced food on schedule. Factories manufactured goods. Transportation systems ran smoothly. But something fundamental had changed. Agent Cathara was one of the best spies in the galaxy. She had lived undercover on human worlds for 5 years. Her reports had always described humans as social creatures who loved to talk, share ideas, and help others. Her latest report was different. Humans continue normal daily activities, she wrote. They interact normally with each other but have ceased meaningful communication with non-humans. All conversations with aliens are limited to essential information only. When pressed for opinions or advice, humans politely decline to engage. Cathara had tried everything. She had approached humans as a lost tourist needing directions. They gave her exact coordinates but offered no additional help. She had asked for restaurant recommendations. They directed her to an information terminal. She had pretended to have problems with her equipment. They told her where to find repair services but didn't offer to help personally. It's like they've built an invisible wall, Cathara concluded. They're not hostile or rude, they're just unreachable. The Crystalline Collective called an emergency meeting of the Inner Council. Representatives from the 12 most powerful species gathered in secret. The room where they met was shielded from all forms of surveillance. High Speaker Glimmering Depths spoke first. The human silence has now lasted 21 standard days. Our analysts believe this is intentional and coordinated. General Thorak of the Hegemony military leaned forward. His massive frame creaked the specially reinforced chair. What do our war computers predict? The probability models are disturbing, replied the crystalline leader. Every simulation suggests that humans only cease communication when they have moved beyond the need for external cooperation. Fleet Commander Zara of the Void Swimmers floated in her containment field. Meaning what? Exactly? Meaning they've decided that talking won't solve whatever problem they're facing, Glimmering Depths answered. So they've stopped trying to convince anyone and started taking direct action. The room fell silent. Everyone was thinking about the Drakmari Empire. General Thorak activated his personal files. I've been reviewing historical data. During the Drakmari crisis, human communication patterns followed the same progression. First, they spoke passionately about the threat. Then they became frustrated when no action was taken. Finally, they went silent. How long between the silence and the disappearance? Asked Commander Zara. 6 months, Thorak replied. The humans stopped talking about the Drakmari threat on day 127 of the crisis. The Drakmari Empire ceased to exist on day 309. High Speaker Glimmering Depths pulsed with worried colors. What action did the humans take during those 6 months? That's the terrifying part, General Thorak said. According to all our intelligence, they took no visible action at all. No fleet movements, no weapon testing, no military preparations. They simply went about their normal business while an entire civilization vanished. The meeting continued for hours. Every major intelligence service shared their findings. The conclusion was always the same. Humans were planning something, but nobody could figure out what. On Earth, Dr. Sarah Chen sat in a secure conference room with 12 other humans. They were the Coordination Committee for Humanity's response to the approaching threat. Status report, Dr. Chen said. Dr. Martinez spoke first. Deep space sensors confirm the threat is still advancing. Estimated arrival in galactic space, 4 months, 2 weeks. Defense preparations, Chen asked. General Harrison nodded. Installation of grid systems is 60% complete. All critical worlds will be protected within 3 months. Technology development? Dr. Singh smiled slightly. The new barrier generators exceeded all expectations. Field testing shows 100% effectiveness against the target threat. Communication protocols? Dr. Chen looked around the table. We maintain silence until the situation is resolved. The galaxy had their chance to listen when we were explaining threats and offering cooperation. They chose to ignore us. This time, We handle the problem ourselves." "And after?" asked General Harrison. "After the threat is eliminated, we'll consider resuming normal diplomatic relations," Dr. Chen replied. "But the galaxy needs to understand something important. From now on, when humanity stops talking, it means we've moved beyond needing their permission to act." The meeting ended. Each committee member returned to their duties. Across human space, millions of people continued their work. To outside observers, everything looked normal. But in hidden facilities and secret laboratories, humanity was preparing for war against something the galaxy had forgotten was even possible. Something that made all current political disputes meaningless. And they had learned from the Drakmari situation. This time, they weren't going to waste breath trying to convince anyone of anything. This time, they would let their actions speak for them. Ambassador Zektar stood before the archived files in the Council's secure database. The holographic displays showed records from 50 years ago. He had been a junior diplomat then, but he remembered the events clearly. Now, as the current situation with human silence continued, he needed to review exactly what had happened with the Drakmari Empire. The files painted a clear picture. The Drakmari had been an aggressive species from the outer rim of the galaxy. They believed that strength was the only truth that mattered. Their empire had grown by conquering weaker civilizations and enslaving anyone who survived. At first, the Galactic Council had not been concerned. The Drakmari were far away. They were attacking primitive worlds that had no technology or defenses. Most council members felt this was natural evolution. Strong species survived, weak ones served. Then the Drakmari had attacked a human research station. The station had been studying plant life on a neutral world called Haven. 12 human scientists were collecting samples when Drakmari ships arrived. The humans sent peaceful messages, explaining they were researchers, not soldiers. The Drakmari response had been simple. They destroyed the research ship and enslaved the scientists. That was when Ambassador Harrison had first spoken to the Galactic Council about the Drakmari threat. Zektar activated the old recordings. Ambassador Harrison's image appeared in the hologram. The human looked young and hopeful. His voice was passionate as he spoke to the assembled delegates. "Honored representatives," Harrison had said, "the Drakmari Empire represents a growing threat to all peaceful civilizations. Their attacks are becoming more frequent and more aggressive. They have now directly attacked human personnel in neutral space." The recording continued. Harrison presented detailed evidence of Drakmari expansion. He showed star charts of their growing territory. He provided intelligence reports about their military capabilities. He offered strategic analysis of where they might strike next. "I urge the Council to take action," Harrison had concluded. "If we work together now, we can stop this threat before it grows beyond our control." Zektar remembered the response. Most delegates had been polite but dismissive. The hegemony representative had pointed out that the attack was in a distant sector. The Crystalline Collective had noted that humans were a minor species with limited military power. The Void Swimmers had suggested that the humans simply avoid Drakmari space. Nobody had taken the threat seriously. The recordings showed Harrison returning week after week. Each time, he brought more evidence, more reports of attacks, more detailed analysis of the growing danger. His presentations became longer and more urgent. "The Drakmari have now conquered 47 worlds," Harrison reported in one session. "Their fleet strength has tripled in the past 6 months. Intelligence suggests they are planning to move into the middle sectors." Still, the Council did nothing. Some delegates had started to find Harrison's presentations annoying. The human was becoming known as someone who exaggerated threats to gain attention for his species. Zektar fast-forwarded through months of recordings. Harrison's face became more tired with each session. His voice grew more desperate. The human was clearly frustrated by the Council's lack of response. Then Zektar found the recording he was looking for. The last time Ambassador Harrison had spoken about the Drakmari threat. "This will be my final presentation on this matter," Harrison had said. His voice was different now, calmer, more controlled. The Drakmari Empire now controls 68 worlds. Their fleet numbers in the thousands. They have enslaved over 2 billion beings. Harrison had paused, looking directly at each council member. "I have presented evidence for 8 months. I have offered detailed plans for coordinated response. I have begged this council to recognize the threat and take action." His expression was completely neutral. "Since no action will be taken, humanity will handle this matter through other means." That was the last time any human had mentioned the Drakmari Empire in a council session. Zektar pulled up the timeline. Harrison's final presentation had been on day 127 of the crisis. For the next 6 months, humans had attended all council meetings, but never spoke about the Drakmari. When asked about the ongoing situation, humans had given vague responses. "We're monitoring the situation. We have no new information to share. We're focusing on other projects." Meanwhile, the Drakmari Empire had continued its expansion. Intelligence reports showed their fleets moving toward more populated sectors. Their attacks became even more brutal. The enslaved populations of conquered worlds were forced to build bigger ships and stronger weapons. The Council finally began to take the threat seriously when Drakmari scouts were detected only 3 sectors away from major trade routes. An emergency session was called to discuss military response. That was when they discovered the Drakmari Empire no longer existed. Zektar opened the final files. The first reports had seemed impossible. Deep space monitors detected no Drakmari ships. Communication attempts to Drakmari worlds received no response. Scout ships sent to investigate found empty planets. Not destroyed planets, empty planets. Every Drakmari world was intact. Cities were undamaged. Technology was still functioning. Food was still in storage. But there were no Drakmari anywhere. 12 billion beings had simply disappeared. The investigation that followed had found no evidence of battle, no signs of violence, no indication of where the Drakmari had gone. Their ships were found drifting empty in space. Their colonies showed no damage. It was as if an entire civilization had just vanished. When the Council demanded answers from the humans, Ambassador Harrison had seemed genuinely surprised. "The Drakmari are gone?" Harrison had asked. "That's interesting. We've been too busy with agricultural research to monitor that situation. Do you know what happened to them?" The humans had maintained this position consistently. They claimed to have no knowledge of what happened to the Drakmari Empire. Their records showed they had been focused on improving crop yields and developing better communication systems. But the timing was impossible to ignore. The humans had stopped talking about the threat on day 127. The Drakmari had disappeared on day 309, exactly 6 months. Zektar closed the files and sat in silence. The pattern was repeating itself. The humans had tried to warn the galaxy about a threat. They had been ignored. They had stopped talking. This time they weren't even bothering to explain what the threat was. Admiral Kavas of the Hegemony War Fleet received an urgent communication from Zektar. Within hours, emergency protocols were activated across the galaxy. Every major military force began deep space surveillance. Intelligence networks were put on maximum alert. Because everyone now understood the terrifying truth about humanity. When humans talked, they were trying to work within the system. They wanted cooperation, compromise, and peaceful solutions. When humans stopped talking, it meant they had given up on the system. It meant they were handling the problem themselves. And based on what happened to the Drakmari Empire, when humans decided to handle a problem themselves, that problem simply ceased to exist. The galaxy had learned to fear human words when they spoke of threats, but they had never realized that human silence was infinitely more terrifying. Now they were about to find out what happened when humanity decided that explaining things was a waste of time. The countdown had begun. Nobody knew what humanity was preparing for. But everyone knew that when humans finished their preparations, something in the galaxy was going to disappear forever. The emergency meeting took place on a secret station hidden in the dark space between star systems. Representatives from every major galactic power attended. The hegemony brought their best military analysts. The Crystalline Collective sent their most advanced computational minds. The Void Swimmers provided their deep space surveillance experts. Everyone had the same goal: figure out what humanity was planning before it was too late. Admiral Kavas activated the holographic display in the center of the room. It showed a real-time map of human space. Hundreds of worlds glowed softly, connected by shipping lanes and communication networks. "This is what we're seeing," Kavas began. "Complete normal activity across all human territories. No unusual fleet movements, no military buildups, no weapons testing that our sensors can detect." High-speaker glimmering depths pulsed with frustrated colors. That's exactly what makes this terrifying. During the Drakmari crisis, human activity also appeared completely normal right up until the disappearance. The assembled intelligence chiefs began sharing their reports. Each one painted the same picture. "Human cargo ships maintain regular schedules," reported Agent Vex of the Merchant Guild Intelligence Service. "Trade volumes are normal, no unusual materials being transported. Human research facilities continue standard operations," added Dr. Kayla from the Scientific Consortium. "Agricultural studies, stellar cartography, communication improvements. Nothing that appears threatening." "Human colonies expand at their usual rate," said Commander Shan of the Border Patrol. "New settlements follow established patterns. Construction projects match historical norms." Admiral Kavas studied the data feeds streaming across his screen. "What about deep space monitoring? Any unusual activity in remote systems?" The surveillance chief from the Void Swimmers floated forward. "We've detected no anomalies. Human deep space operations appear to focus on asteroid mining and scientific observations, nothing that suggests military preparation." That was exactly the problem. Everything looked normal, but everyone knew it couldn't be normal. Humans didn't stop talking unless they were planning something major. Dr. Zhen Va, the galaxy's leading expert on human psychology, stood up. She had studied human behavior for 30 years and had written the standard reference work on human strategic thinking. "The pattern matches previous human crisis responses," she said. "When humans face a threat they cannot solve through diplomacy, they shift to what they call internal mode. They stop trying to convince others and focus entirely on developing their own solution." "But what kind of solution?" demanded General Thorak. "What threat could require 6 months of secret preparation?" Dr. Jen Va pulled up her analysis files. "Based on historical data, humans only enter internal mode when facing existential threats. Threats that could destroy civilizations or end entire species." The room fell silent. If humans were preparing for an existential threat, where was it? The Cathari spy network had the most advanced surveillance capabilities in the galaxy. Their director, a being whose name was unpronounceable to most species, shared their findings. "We have operatives embedded in human society at all levels," the director reported through a translator. "Government officials, military personnel, research scientists, colony administrators. Our analysis shows normal human behavior in all personal interactions." "What do you mean by normal?" asked Admiral Kavas. "Humans continue to interact normally with each other. They share information, express opinions, debate issues, and make collective decisions. The silence protocol only applies to communication with non-humans." This information was deeply troubling. It meant the humans weren't confused or experiencing some kind of breakdown. They were following a deliberate strategy that specifically excluded the rest of the galaxy. "Do your operatives have any information about what humans are preparing for?" Glimmering Depths asked. "That's the disturbing part," the Cathari director replied. Our operatives report normal conversation among humans about everyday topics: work, family, entertainment, local politics. But whenever the subject of galactic affairs comes up, humans simply change the topic. All of them? All of them. Every human, from the highest government official to the lowest factory worker, follows the same pattern. They discuss anything except galactic politics or their species' current activities in relation to other civilizations. The implications were staggering. This level of coordination suggested that every human in the galaxy was following the same secret protocol. No leaks, no exceptions, no one breaking ranks. Ambassador Zektar had been silent throughout the meeting. Finally, he spoke up. "I requested a private meeting with Dr. Chen 3 days ago," he said. "I thought direct communication might bypass whatever policy they're following." Every being in the room focused on him. A direct diplomatic meeting was the highest level of official communication. "She agreed to meet," Zektar continued. "The conversation was unsettling." He activated a recording device. Dr. Chen's voice filled the room. "Ambassador Zektar, thank you for requesting this meeting. How can I help you today?" "Dr. Chen, the entire galaxy is concerned about humanity's recent silence. Can you explain what's happening?" "I'm not sure what you mean, Ambassador. Humanity continues to participate in all scheduled diplomatic functions, but you refuse to engage in substantive discussions. You won't share opinions or offer advice on any topic." "That's correct. We have determined that our input is not currently needed. But surely you have concerns about galactic affairs? Opinions about current issues?" "Oh, we have many concerns and opinions, Ambassador. We simply see no benefit in sharing them at this time. Can you at least tell me if there's some crisis or threat that humanity is responding to?" "Humanity is always monitoring various potential issues, Ambassador. We have nothing specific to report to the Council." "Dr. Chen, with respect, your species' behavior has changed dramatically. The galaxy needs to understand why." "I understand your concern, Ambassador. However, humanity's internal policies and decision-making processes are not subjects we discuss with external parties." "Are you planning some kind of action that affects galactic security?" "Humanity has no plans that violate any galactic laws or treaties, Ambassador. We remain committed to all our existing agreements." The recording ended. Zektar looked around the room at the worried faces of the galaxy's most powerful beings. "She answered every question," he said, "but told me absolutely nothing useful." High Speaker Glimmering Depths dimmed to a worried shade. "Professional diplomatic non-answers. She was polite, technically truthful, and completely evasive." "Which means they're definitely planning something," Admiral Kavas concluded. "Something they don't want us to know about until it's too late to interfere." The meeting continued for 6 more hours. Every intelligence service shared their data. Every military force reported their observations. Every scientific organization provided their analysis. The conclusion was unanimous and terrifying. Humanity was preparing for something enormous, and nobody could figure out what it was. As the representatives departed to their home worlds, emergency protocols were activated across the galaxy. Military forces went to high alert. Deep space sensors were recalibrated for maximum sensitivity. Intelligence networks doubled their surveillance efforts. But they were looking for the wrong thing. They were watching for human military activity, human weapons development, human fleet movements. They were analyzing human behavior patterns and communication protocols. They never thought to look beyond the edge of the galaxy, where something ancient and hungry was approaching at sublight speed, following routes it had used 1,000 years earlier when the galaxy had been young and unprepared. Humanity had detected the approaching threat 4 months ago. They had 2 months left to finish their preparations. And they had learned from the Drakmari situation that explaining threats to the Galactic Council was a waste of time that could have been better spent on finding solutions. This time, they were just going to solve the problem and explain later, if there was anyone left to explain it to. The emergency alert came at 0347 Galactic Standard Time. Deep space monitoring stations across the galaxy detected the same impossible readings. Admiral Kavas was pulled from sleep by urgent communications from his watch officers. "Sir, you need to see this immediately," Commander Zara's voice crackled through his personal communicator. Kavas rushed to the command center of Hegemony Fleet Command. The main display showed sensor readings that made no sense. Massive objects were emerging from hyperspace at the galaxy's outer edge, but these objects were unlike anything in the databases. "How many ships?" Kavas demanded. "That's the problem, sir," Commander Zara replied. "Our computers can't determine if these are ships or something else entirely. They're enormous. Each one is roughly the size of a small moon." The tactical display updated as more sensor data arrived. 12 massive objects hung in space beyond the galactic edge. They looked organic, like enormous sea creatures made of metal and darkness. Strange energy patterns flowed across their surfaces. They moved with purpose, heading directly toward the galactic core. "Do we have any record of technology like this?" Kavas asked. The computer technician's face was pale. "Sir, I found a partial match in the historical archives. Ancient records from over 1,000 years ago mention beings called the Devourers." Kavas felt his blood turn cold. The Devourers were legend, stories told to frighten young soldiers, warnings from the early days of galactic civilization about creatures that consumed entire worlds. "Get me all available information on these Devourers," he ordered. The files that appeared on his screen were sparse and frightening. The Devourers were an extragalactic species that had last visited the galaxy during the Third Era. They were described as world eaters, consciousness destroyers, beings that fed on the life force of entire civilizations. According to the ancient records, they had consumed dozens of worlds before disappearing back into the void between galaxies. The survivors had assumed they were gone forever. "Estimated time until they reach inhabited systems?" Kavas asked. "At their current speed, approximately 6 days until they reach the outer colonies," Commander Zara reported. Kavas activated emergency protocols. Within minutes, warning signals were broadcast across the galaxy. Every major fleet was ordered to converge on the outer defenses. Every military commander was briefed on the approaching threat. The response was immediate panic. The Hegemony's war computers calculated the odds of successful resistance. The results were not encouraging. Even if every ship in the galaxy worked together perfectly, they had less than a 15% chance of stopping even one Devourer vessel. Emergency sessions were called by every major government. The Galactic Council prepared to evacuate to deep space bunkers. Civilian populations began fleeing toward the galactic core. That was when the human ship appeared. It was a standard diplomatic vessel, the same type Dr. Chen used for council meetings. Compared to the massive Devourer ships, it looked like a tiny insect approaching a pack of space whales. The human ship broadcast a simple message on all frequencies. "The territory you're approaching is under human protection. You are directed to return to extragalactic space immediately." Admiral Kavas stared at his screen in disbelief. "Are the humans insane? Do they understand what they're facing?" The response from the lead Devourer ship was immediate and terrifying. A wave of psychic energy rolled across space, a mental scream that would have driven most species to madness. The ship's sensors recorded the attack, and just reading the data made Kavas feel sick. But the human ship showed no reaction. It continued to float calmly in space. Then the Devourers opened fire. The weapons that erupted from the alien ships were beyond anything in galactic military doctrine. Beams of dark energy that could crack planets. Projectiles that existed partially outside normal space. Gravity weapons that could collapse stars. All of these weapons struck the tiny human ship. None of them had any effect. The human vessel sat unmoved in space. No damage, no defensive fire, no apparent effort to avoid the attacks. The weapons simply stopped when they reached the ship, as if hitting an invisible wall. The Devourer fleet stopped firing. For the first time in 1,000 years, something had resisted their power completely. Then, the human ship spoke again. "This is your final warning. Leave this galaxy immediately or face the consequences of your choice." The lead Devourer responded with another psychic attack, this one powerful enough to be detected across 3 star systems. It was a mental assault designed to break the will of entire civilizations. The human ship's reply was calm and professional. Warning acknowledged and ignored. Initiating protection protocol. What happened next would be talked about for centuries. The human ship didn't fire weapons. It didn't launch missiles or activate shields. Instead, reality around the Devourer fleet began to change. Space itself started to bend. The massive alien ships found themselves trapped in fields of twisted physics. Their weapons stopped working. Their engines couldn't move them. Even their psychic abilities were blocked by forces they couldn't understand. One by one, the Devourer ships began to turn around, not because they chose to, but because they were being turned around by something that treated their advanced technology like children's toys. Admiral Kavas watched in stunned silence as the most terrifying threat in galactic history was forced to retreat by a single human diplomatic vessel. "Sir," Commander Zara whispered, "should we send reinforcements to help the humans?" "Help them do what?" Kavas replied. "They appear to have the situation under control." As the last Devourer ship disappeared into hyperspace, heading back toward the void between galaxies, the human vessel sent one final transmission. "Threat neutralized. Resuming normal operations." Then it simply flew away. The emergency session of the Galactic Council that followed was unlike any in galactic history. Representatives from every species crowded into the Great Hall. Everyone wanted answers. Dr. Sarah Chen walked to the central podium. For the first time in 6 months, she was prepared to speak at length. "Honored representatives," she began, "humanity detected the approach of the Devourer fleet 4 months ago. We immediately began preparations to address this threat." Ambassador Zektar leaned forward. "Why didn't you warn the Council? Why didn't you ask for assistance?" Dr. Chen's expression was patient, but firm. "We attempted to warn this Council about the Drakmari threat 50 years ago. We provided detailed evidence, offered strategic analysis, and requested coordinated action. The response was to ignore our warnings until the threat was eliminated." She paused, looking around the chamber. "We learned from that experience. When facing existential threats, humanity has found it more efficient to solve the problem ourselves rather than spend months trying to convince others to take action." High Speaker Glimmering Depths pulsed with urgent colors. "But how did you develop such advanced defensive capabilities? How did you defeat the Devourers?" "We didn't defeat them," Dr. Chen replied. "We simply made it clear that attacking this galaxy would be unprofitable for them. They chose to leave rather than face the consequences of continued aggression." "But what consequences? What weapons do you possess?" Dr. Chen smiled slightly. "The same capabilities we use to resolve the Drakmari situation. Technologies that we prefer not to discuss in detail." The chamber erupted in confused voices. Every delegate had questions. Everyone wanted to know how humans had developed such incredible power in secret. Dr. Chen waited for quiet, then continued. "Humanity has decided to resume normal diplomatic participation in galactic affairs. The immediate threat has been resolved. However, the Council should understand that our approach to crisis management has evolved." "What do you mean?" Zektar asked. "We mean that in the future, when humanity stops talking, it's not because we're angry or upset," Dr. Chen explained. "It's because we've moved beyond the need for discussion and begun implementing solutions." She looked directly at each major delegate. "You spent months trying to figure out what we were planning. The answer was simple. We were protecting the galaxy from a threat you had forgotten existed. We stopped talking because explaining the situation would have taken time we needed for preparation. Will you share these defensive technologies with the Council? Asked Admiral Kavos. Dr. Chen's expression became thoughtful. Perhaps, when the galaxy demonstrates that it can handle such responsibility. When we see evidence that advanced capabilities would be used for protection rather than conquest. She gathered her files and prepared to leave the podium. Until then, humanity will continue to monitor threats to galactic security. We will continue to respond as necessary, and we will continue to attend council meetings. Dr. Chen paused at the edge of the platform. But the next time we stop talking, we recommend that instead of trying to spy on our activities, you simply ask yourself one question. What threat is so serious that humanity has decided explaining it would be a waste of time? As the human delegation left the chamber, the assembled representatives sat in stunned silence. For 50 years, they had feared humanity's words when humans spoke of threats. Now they understood that humanity's silence was infinitely more terrifying. Because when humans stopped talking, it meant they were already solving problems that the rest of the galaxy couldn't even imagine.